Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 158. There was a week-long gap between podcasts, and there was a very good reason for that. It wasn't just because I'm lazy. But number one, I was dedicating all of my time. Hey, do you guys see why that video took so long to come out? You see why it took like a month and a half to come out? Yeah, that was like twice the work of a usual video that I do. That Tender Loving Care video was very labor intensive. So I'm glad that it's done. But that's why, it hit Sunday, my usual recording day, and I was like, I'm just going to push through and I'll record it later. I'll record the podcast later. I just ended up being like busy with stuff and engagements and things like that. And then I got sick. And so that's why there's like a 2-week gap or whatever. 2 week or 1 week. I don't remember at this point. It feels like it's been forever. I got sick with a cold and I was like, I don't want to record. I don't want to do anything. My voice doesn't sound great. I think I recorded the commentary track because I have like I feel like I have a responsibility to do that for my patrons. Yeah, so that's why this is coming out a little bit later. And I figured, hey, let me give it like a clean 2 days. Let me give it, 2 weeks, and we'll just start fresh and just catch up on all the stuff that I've been doing, which hasn't been a whole ton, actually. I've had a lot of time dedicated to the next video that I'm also working on, because I have to record a fair amount of footage for it. I'm excited. It's something that I've talked about before on this podcast. It's funny, I can say that, and that can mean a billion things, because we are 158 episodes in, and I have talked about a lot of stuff. So you've got no clue, but if you're a regular listener, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, it's a thing he talked about. I don't even remember the last time, like a year ago. I have no clue. Yeah, I did a very fun live stream. I had 2 really fun... I'll start with the first chronological thing that happened. I had 2 really fun interactions with YouTube's automated systems recently. The first was when I uploaded that TLC video. I uploaded it, all good. I'm like feeling relaxed, going to bed later that night, and I stayed up like a little bit. It was like 2 a.m. and I was just about ready to fall asleep. I was just in that mode. And then I got an email that the video got age restricted. And I was like, oh, god damn it. Ugh. So if you're not familiar, an age restriction basically means on YouTube that the video will not be recommended to anyone who is logged in and has their age set as being under 18. Which I feel like if you're going to make an account, you're just going to lie anyway. But maybe the bigger thing is that it doesn't recommend your videos to people who aren't logged in to a Google account. And that's kind of like, there is this unknown number of people that YouTube has a very hard time logging, like what what they're watching and for how long. It's people who don't use accounts to browse YouTube. It's like it could be a lot, it could be a little, and I think because of like legal reasons or whatever, they aren't really allowed to track certain information because they haven't signed into they haven't signed an agreement for that. They haven't signed like a user agreement that you would when you make an account. So what they can actually track about those people is very limited. And that's probably a good thing, but the trickle-down effect is that for me, I do not get very good analytics about how many people watch my stuff completely not logged in. So it's like, the other thing is that getting age restricted it's not very good for a video's visibility, so that's not great. And it stressed me out so much that it happened in like the first 12 hours. So probably the majority of the views were probably already on the video. But still, I got up and I was like, okay. So what I did, I rejected it. You can reject it. You could appeal it. you can make an appeal to the age restriction. Now, I'm being silly, right? I'm being dumb. I've been on this website for too long. I should know that this is a futile process because YouTube, no one manually reviews it. They say they do, but they lie. I know that they lie. What I'm pretty sure happens is essentially YouTube has this bot that just sweeps videos, and it has what I'm pretty sure is just a nipple detector, because that was what got caught. That was what got caught on the original upload. And I'm pretty sure that when you make an appeal, all they do is just run the bot on it like 2 or 3 more times to make sure it wasn't a false positive. And then if nope, there's still a nipple there. Because like they don't read context, they don't read into what the artistic intent of like, why did I do that? How am I explaining they don't care. They don't give a fuck. They're going to age restrict it. So that was dumb. I should have figured that they would do that. Because I have gotten away with, honestly, I mean, I made that whole video on like the Brad Stallion series, and that has way more nudity in it, but it's all censored, right? Specifically, like the nipples, like all the nipples and stuff are censored. So I figure, all right, that's probably what it is. I'm just being dumb. Ugh. I flew too close to the sun. Flew too close to the sun with that intro. I got a little too edgy. And went a little too far out with trying to be artsy and stuff like that, and trying to confront the viewer. So what annoys me is that YouTube does not. If they would just let me blur the fucking nipple out with the existing tools that they have on their platform, which I know like they suck and they break all the time and like the page doesn't load properly, but YouTube has things like this. For instance, when you get copyright claimed on stuff, you can literally just if it's audio, you can mute the audio in that part of the video. If it is video, I'm pretty sure you can apply blurs. I've seen that before. There's stuff that you can do. You can trim out the entire portion that it has been claimed. Like you can do stuff like this, but they do not. For some reason, they don't allow you to do that when it's an age restriction thing. It's like, okay, there's a nipple on screen. Just let me censor the nipple. If that's really what the problem is, just let me censor it. They won't let me do that, even though they have all the tools in the world to let me. They said they were going to do that. They never implemented it because I imagine their whole development pipeline at free Google is I don't know what they're. I don't know. It's just totally fucked. So I got up out of my chair because the claim got rejected with the appeal got rejected within the hour. So, all right, fine. So I got up and I just made a new version that just censored that out. And then uploaded that, and yep, no problem. No problemo. So, that was kind of annoying, but I just want to move past it. I'm proud of the video, whatever. I did a stream on Wednesday, where I picked up... Sorry, I streamed a watch-along of a public domain movie that I had picked up from somewhere that I went. Technically, it wasn't a movie. It was a 1950s sci-fi adventure action serial drama called Radar Men from the Moon. I made double sure. I looked it up and I was like, yep, it went public domain in the 70s, in like 71 or something like that. So you can go and watch it on the Internet Archive. You can go watch it for re-uploaded in its entirety on YouTube. So I should be fine, right? I should be fine on like, I'm not going to get, it wouldn't even bother me if I got a claim, but just to make sure, you know, because like the stream might get blocked afterwards. So I'm pretty sure that I'll be fine. So I stream it. And it was a really fun time. The whole thing, the whole serial in total is maybe 3 hours. So I sat down and commentated over it, and a bunch of people showed up, had really good viewership, and then suddenly the stream died. It wasn't a problem on my end. YouTube had manually taken the stream offline, and I was like, what the hell? I have never seen that happen before. I don't even think they do that with like terrorist content. But for me, oh, but we got to go nuclear on this guy. So and what was super weird about it was I got an email the moment that it happened. And typically it said I got a copyright claim, which didn't make any sense. The whole thing is public domain. What are you talking about? It says I got a copyright claim. When I looked at the email, every other time I've gotten a claim, which has happened every so often, it always tells me what got claimed, like the specific, if I used a song, it'll say you used this song, it was claimed by this entity, like UMG, right? Because they own a bunch of music. UMG claimed your video. It'll give me those details so I know, okay, that's what I got popped for. There were no details in the copyright claim. It just said, we detected copyrighted content. And I was like, can you tell me what? Can you tell me what was claimed? Why am I being taken down now? Because I made a new stream. Unfortunately, it didn't recover to quite the same level of viewership, which was a real bummer. Real fucking bummer. But we finished it, and it was fun. It was whatever. Later that night, both the streams get copyright claims. And and they have details about what the claim was on. It was a claim from Mystery Science Theater 3000. Or Shout Factory, or whoever, I don't know who owns them. It's some kind of one of those, Slam, Blammo Productions, or something like that. It was a claim from them for a movie that was like the Goo Monsters or something like that. Like, nothing that I had watched. And I was just scratching my head. What the hell? It's like, if you aren't familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000, it was a show that I don't know what channel it aired on, but it was a show that was basically like a precursor to, I don't know. I think I was explaining it in the chat because I'd gotten it. Wait, I did get that. When did I get the claim? Before or after the stream finished? I don't remember. But I was on some live. I might have been on Prox's live stream. I don't remember. Talking about this experience. And someone called it like reaction, the original reaction content, which I thought was kind of funny. That's essentially what it was, is they would take like old public domain B movies and then they would just watch them and riff on them. And I like Mystery Science Theater 3000. I grew up on people who were inspired by them. So I always like their stuff. I've actually been to a couple screenings of the same cast does like a modern version of it. I've been to a couple screenings of those. I went to one for like The Room. That was really fun. I took my mom to that. That was crazy. I was like 11. Anyway, I was very confused about this because I did not watch that movie. Someone in the stream chat, when I had to remake it after the stream got taken down, someone said, "Do you think it was the music?" And I was like, that's a good maybe. And when I got those copyright claims later on, after the streams were done, it told me what timestamps there were that got claimed. And I was like, okay, let me scroll through these. And you know what? It was all the opening title sequence of every episode of the serial. It was all the opening title sequences. And I'm thinking that might have had, maybe it was the same piece of music that had been used in whatever movie they watched. So I looked it up, and no, the movies have different distributors, so I don't know. I don't know like how what. Maybe I could go find the original one. Like maybe it actually is the same musical sequence for the logo or something like that. I don't know. I've got no clue. But that would be honestly really fucked. That would be really stupid if Mystery Science Theater 3000 has watched a movie which is public domain, and it's totally cool for them to do it, but suddenly, because they have now made like a movie commentary over it, all of that footage suddenly becomes copyrighted, right? Which, of course, when those were made in the 90s, that would have been like, what? Okay, yeah, no, but you can just redistribute it. Like, the movie itself isn't copyrighted, but in the modern day with YouTube's stupid fucking content bots, right? They just go, oh, music audio match. And they can't infer that, like, well, they know, like, okay, yeah, if I was literally restreaming an MST3K episode, that would be different, but I'm not. I'm just watching the same movie as them. So stupid. I hate this shit. Anyway, the streams are still up. Thankfully, they weren't blocked anywhere. I don't have a problem with them getting copyright claimed. Like, I'm not running ads on those, you know? Like, I don't have a problem with it. What really pissed me off was the stream getting taken down. That was really lame. That was really dumb. I have never seen that happen before. Anyway, that was like my little story time to get my brain going. I'm recording this I'm recording this at like 1 a.m. because I did not get a lot of sleep last night. I was dog sitting for my mom, and I was up at like 3 a.m. because the dog wanted to get on the bed, and then he wanted to go off the bed because he can't get up on his own. He's a very old little guy. And then I had to also wake up early in the morning to take him out to use the bathroom and take a little walk. So I was very tired, and I fell asleep at like 7. I fell asleep at like 7 p.m. last night. So now it's like barely the next day, and now I'm wide awake. And I'm ready to talk about the comments that I didn't get last time because there were no questions. No questions. What else I'll talk about is another sci-fi movie that I watched from... I want to talk about this. It's from 1957. 1957. It's called 20 Million Miles to Earth. So I got like this little 4-pack of monster movies. And it's got like Mothra on it. It's got the giant claw. You know, it's like a flying battleship. That's how big it is. And and I just randomly picked 20 Million Miles to Earth. Why not? I'll just watch that tonight. That movie, I was expecting like, okay, this is going to be like a fun little campy, silly thing. That might be some of the greatest stop motion of the 20th century. Like, straight up. I'm not kidding you. And I found out later on that was a movie. That movie, 20 Million Miles to Earth, was developed entirely to showcase the mad skills of Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen, if you aren't aware, is a legendary Hollywood special effects, specifically stop motion, is what he's very well known for. He did the skeleton fight from Jason and the Argonauts, like maybe one of the most famous scenes in movie history, that like this long extended fight scene with like all of these different characters composited with like these stop motion skeleton warriors composited on top of the scene, and it's all choreographed so well, and it's like brilliant, right? That's what he's most well known for, and I believe that was later. That was later than this movie. But this is like, wow, dude, that guy was insane. 20 Million Miles to Earth is a very simple sci-fi monster movie that is really elevated by just the level of technique with it. Like, holy shit, if you like stuff like that, just watch it. Like, just watch. Like, the plot is entirely like whatever. It's there to just show off how good this monster is. It's basically a bunch of scientists come back from a trip to Venus. They land somewhere in the Mediterranean near Italy, like off the Italian coast. And they brought back a specimen of a Venusian creature, like this little reptile thing. And it's in its egg state. And they essentially bring it back. It's this weird, gross looking pod. Like slime pod. This little kid finds it because it washes up on the shore. They crash land in the ocean, and most of them die. There's like one survivor, basically. And this little Italian kid finds it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go sell this to the zoologist from America, and I'm gonna go in town and use the money to buy a cowboy hat." He buys a little cowboy hat because he's like, oh, I love Texas, it's so awesome, I'm a little Italian boy. So there's like a zoologist and his daughter, and they're like, whoa, check this shit out. And overnight, before they know it, the thing has like broken out of its thing, because like exposure to oxygen makes it grow more, and it's like a tiny little thing, like the size of a little toy. It's like a bipedal lizard thing, right? Very simple looking monster. And you're like, okay, cool, whatever. And they're like, okay, we're gonna put it in a little cage, and then we're gonna take this off to somewhere. Like they go to Rome. We're gonna take this to Rome, show it off to some like scientists or whatever. And then before they know it, it has grown into like the size of like a little bigger than a man, and escapes. And they've got to track down this monster. They're trying to get to it. The military's trying to get to it. They're trying to capture it for science. And if it gets too dangerous, they're going to kill it. And I thought, there's a lot of these types of movies where, because you have a monster and they only show it very briefly because either they don't have the budget to include it in the movie very much, or it doesn't look very good, so they're trying to kind of keep it, maybe in the shadow, like they're trying to keep it in the dark or something like that. Dude, this is not a very long, it's like an 80-minute movie or something like that, 75 minutes, something along those lines. Pretty short, like, runtime. There are long, extended sequence. There's probably 20 to 30 minutes of just monster in this film. Hand animated stop motion, and much of it composited, some of it on miniaturized versions of sets, and it is unbelievably good. Of course, it is running, or I say running, it's animated at a lower frame rate than real life, so there's that small element of like, it's obviously a special effect, but if you just kind of look past that part of it, this thing is animated like an animal. Like, there is weight to its footsteps. It reacts to things in the environment in a very, in this very realistic way. Like the way it'll lean forward and then suddenly like shrink back and pull its head back. Just like these subtle little motions. It'll breathe sometimes, and it'll be like literally expanding and contracting its chest. It's like incredible work. There's this whole sequence where it's like roaming the countryside. It goes into a barn, and the way it's lit, there's like mood lighting on it as it's walking through the barn. It's this like miniaturized set. There's a scene where the farmer goes and tries to fight the monster, and it cuts to, they didn't just have a model of the creature. They had one of the farmer. It's like a miniature. It's like a puppet miniature clay, whatever, of the man, and they are like grappling and fighting on the floor, and it's like an entire stop motion fight sequence that is like, it's just one shot of them fighting and rolling around on the ground and like stabbing and scratching and it's like, it looks so good for being like puppets, it looks great. There's this whole scene where there's a whole sequence, like the whole like last 10-15 minutes of the movie is like this, when it's at like a much bigger size, it's grown even larger, and it escapes its containment, and like they're holding it in like a next to a zoo in Rome, and it escapes because it was like, it's being like sedated with electricity or something, and the machine gets broken, and it wakes up and it storms out and it fights an elephant. There's an elephant that escapes, and the elephant turns to stop motion, and the monster and the elephant have a battle in the street. And they're like grappling with each other. Like the trunk is, they're trying to wrap it around the big lizard guy. And they're like trying to like push each other around. And it's so heavy. And it feels like it is amazing. It is probably the best stop motion of any movie before like Leica, like Leica animation or something, or like a Tim Burton thing like that. And even that was doing that was going for a very different thing. This is like there's like I would say that those things are like entirely right. Those things are supposed to be entirely animated. So there's a cartoonish quality to the whole thing. This is like realism. This is actually going for like realism in stop motion of this is a live action real sets and characters and people that are alongside this monster that nowadays would be done with CG or something. But back then it was stop motion, and they're just compositing it into the shots and all that, and probably doing some forced perspective stuff. But man, it is crazy. That movie is amazing. I loved it. Loved it. Kat and I watched Labyrinth, the David Bowie Labyrinth, which apparently I saw as like a very little kid. I have no memory of it. My mom told me that apparently we watched it together. Yeah, my only knowledge of Labyrinth other than that was that I used to do a theater camp, like over the summer. I went to like a little theater camp at a local park. And I think the first year I was there as like a little kid, we did a production of Labyrinth. And I was just like some random background singer, dancer, I say dancer. It's not like the choreography was very complex for like a bunch of little kids. But that's my knowledge of Labyrinth. It's that and millennial women who are obsessed with this movie. I am well aware of David Bowie's bulge, the legendary bulge, and the fucking balls that he spins around in his hands, the crystal balls. Yeah, so apparently Kat was telling me that this had a bunch of puppetry done by Jim Henson, and this is like the first movie he did puppets for that bombed, which kind of surprised me. I'm really curious as to why it bombed. I don't know if it just released in like a bad window or something like that. Let's find out together. Labyrinth. Why did Labyrinth flop? Oh wow, yeah, there are a lot of of writing about this movie's failure to perform. That's funny, because it's not. I don't know. Was it the advertising? I guess it's just a bunch of behind the scenes stuff. Audience reception was lukewarm. Huh. I have no idea. Maybe it just didn't excite people at the time. Which is funny because I don't know. Like, I think it's a pretty good movie. Like, I like it a lot. A lot? I like it above average. I don't know if I loved it. Kat loves the movie, and I get why. I think I say I like it above average. No, it's a very it's really enjoyable, charming, very much. I don't know. It's kind of cool to see something that is very Alice in Wonderland / There's totally another one that I'm trying to think of. I don't know. The Phantom Toll Booth. I love The Phantom Toll Booth. That book is That's great. That's a great book. But that kind of like, I don't want to use the word isekai. I don't want to use it. But that kind of like isekai, fuck, it like stabs me whenever I use that to refer to something, to refer to Labyrinth. But it is appropriate, that kind of a story of a character falling into some sort of magical world. If you aren't familiar, Labyrinth is this it's a very fantastical movie. It's got sort of it isn't very literal feeling, even in the moments where it's supposed to take place in the real world. It always feels a little bit, fantastical. It feels like there's a layer of kind of fairy tale over it. It's about a girl, some like teenage girl who oh, my life sucks. My parents want me to be home by a certain time, or what. She's just like a mopey teenager, and she's like upset about shit and stuff like that. And she has like this little baby brother that she's got to take care of, and her parents are going out on a dinner date, and she's got to watch the kid. And she's some like theater kid. She's very theater kid, and she is so annoyed at her baby brother that she's in some play called Labyrinth. And I guess the plot of the movie is supposed to mirror the plot of the play that she's practicing for. And it's about like a goblin king or whatever, and she wishes that the goblins would take her little brother away. And then a bunch of these little creatures show up. David Bowie with his huge penis shows up, and he's like, yeah, I'm taking your brother. If you want him back, you can come to my castle in the center of this labyrinth in like this other world. And she just kind of like accepts it. That's kind of like the very dream-like part about it. That I like that aspect, because I don't know. I wonder if there's anything like it to compare in the modern day. If there's anything comparable to it because I feel like if a different screenwriter, maybe a more modern one, would have made it like a fish out of water thing, like, what? You're telling me that there's a labyrinth now and a little goblin? You know, like what? But because it has this sort of dreamlike quality, it she steps from the real world into this fantasy labyrinth Jim Henson world very seamlessly, and just kind of accepts it as like, well, shit, I guess this is what's happening now. You know, she's like, well, I gotta go. And it's like if he pointed her down like to you gotta go to the corner store. That's how casually she accepts the existence of this magical world. And I kind of like that. Kind of reminded me of some of the Miyazaki elements, like in his movies that have similar sort of plots. That I like some of those aspects in his films where people just kind of accept stuff. And I think that for a child, especially, that is a child with like a very active imagination who would like, you know, maybe they'll fantasize, because as a kid, you know, you don't really know what's real and what's not, and what could be possible and what isn't, and all of that is ripped away from you as you get older and you're forced to learn more about the world. And so the idea that, yeah, you could just look out the window and fucking David Bowie's there with his big penis and his like glam rock hair, and a bunch of little goblin puppets, is that could just exist, right? And that as a kid, those two worlds of reality and fantasy, there isn't as much distinction. There isn't a barrier between them that comes with age and understanding and all that. So I like that part of it. There is some incredibly I mean, I was just talking about the stop motion in 20 Million Miles to Earth. There's some incredible puppetry and special effects in this film. I mean, you know, obviously it's Jim Henson, and the Henshin, Kamen Rider? Jim Henshin. Oh, someone draw Jim Henshin, and it's him, but he's like he's got like the Kamen Rider suit on. Henson. That would be awesome. Oh, or maybe the alternate, you could be, so it's like, you know, it's like a Kamen Rider, but when he goes like, he says like Henson instead of Henshin, and he turns into like Kermit the Frog or something. That's $1 million idea. That's why you come to this podcast. I'm just giving these out for free, guys. I'm just giving these $1 million, $1 billion ideas out for free. The Henson Studios, they always do like the craziest shit. That's part of the fun of it, right? Is I'm like, how did they do this, right? I have a lot of respect for CG animators, right? And computer graphics peoples and all of that. Like, it's a great art form. I appreciate it. They're like the backbone of big Hollywood productions for the last 20 years, essentially. But there is an element I really like about practical effects, which is where I'm watching, one of the main characters of the film is Hoggle. Yeah, his name Hoggle, who's this little dwarf guy, and it's clearly a person in a costume, right? They got like a little person and they put them in a costume, but like the mouth, like the whole head is animatronic, and it's like how did they do? I'm watching, like, how did they pull that off? How did they do it? And I asked Kat, and she just goes, it was really complicated. And I'm like, that's crazy. Part of the fun is I'm like watching it, but I'm also thinking about like, man, how did they pull that off? I don't know. Like, I'm just appreciating the craft of how impressive all of that is. And there is so much great puppetry. I love the way so many things in this movie look. There's a lot of things, a lot of parts of the set that are supposed to animate, like walls with faces on them, like made out of the rock, and they move in this way that is, I don't even know what material it is, but it looks so otherworldly, and the how they move so smoothly is like, there is a real different quality to it. There's one of the early scenes where she first enters the labyrinth, and it's just this like long stretching corridor of rock, you know, with this kind of otherworldly sort of pink white sky over her, and she's walking through it, and it's all real sets. And I'm thinking like, man, if this was done today, I feel like this would all be green screened, or like a lot of it would be green screened. But there's like this, the practical sets give this real tactile feel that I think really legitimizes the fantasy that kind of, I don't know, I think it really, especially for a movie like this, I think if you were to remake this movie and do it with CG for those like environment shots and stuff like that, it would, and like the animatronics, apparently they were going to do a remake of it, and I would be very disappointed if they replaced all that with CG, because again, I think part of the appeal or the intrigue for me is the way that the movie has this kind of this sort of hazy border between reality and fantasy, and the fact that all of the fantasy aspects are real physical things that she's interacting with really goes a long way to legitimize that. It really sells you on like, this is a real fantasy, and this is an actual place that you could reach out and touch. And it is as real. The fantasy parts, they seem impossible, but what you're seeing on screen is as real as just, you know, her house back on the real world, or, you know, the earth, or whatever. I like that a lot. Yeah, it's just like it's a very charming, intriguing movie. It's one of those things where I always felt myself being pulled along just because I kind of wanted to see what the next interesting thing was. I didn't love like all the musical numbers. I didn't. I thought that the musical numbers were fine. Not a lot like gets. I didn't feel like a lot got super progressed or established by them. So I was a little bit bored, a little bit checked out during some of them. You know, thankfully the movie isn't like all musical stuff. I don't know. The musical things felt like breaks from the plot, which I was like, eh. Some very impressive puppetry, you know, the whole way, which is nice. It's just like plot wise, it's like, okay, well, I like the characters. I just kind of, they're just sort of like, sometimes I just feel like they're wasting time. I wonder how much of the musical aspects were just because they had David Bowie, or, you know, I don't know. Who does perform a couple songs in this. There's a couple good ones, you know. I like the one near the end where like during the climax, that is a mostly musical sequence that I really liked. I love the like MC Escher visuals. Really cool looking stuff. It's dude, I feel like there's this weird effect now that I've lived in a world with CGI my entire life, where I look at that set near the end of Labyrinth, where it's this long, like, tower, basically. And it's this crazy MC Escher type, well, clearly based on his drawing of, like, all the staircases and stuff that, you know, physically would make no sense in real life, right? And I'm looking at that, and it's all real. It's all practical, real sets that the actors are walking around on. And something about that is, like, shocking to me. Like, oh, you could do that? I forgot that you could just build a big set. You could just build a large set for your movie, and it isn't all just like CGI. Right? I also get that sometimes when I look at like big crowd shots, and I'm like, oh, you can do that with like people, with like real people and not CGI people. Right? Like, it's a quick little reality check, I suppose. Literally, haha. Oh man, like, I had to be reminded that you can. Wow, this is like a real thing. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but have you ever gotten that? Have you ever like watched an old movie and they do something like that, like some huge, completely fabricated for the film set, right? Like all this is just like on a sound stage, this big complex set, and you're just like, wow, I forgot that they could do that. I forgot that was an option. Anyway, maybe I'm not giving modern films enough credit. I'm just so used to it. I also don't watch a lot of films, modern films. But yeah, there's a really weird, distracting. There was a sequence that was so distracting. It was like the one time I pulled out my phone because I had to go look it up. And it's this musical sequence where it's like the red guys who take their heads off and like throw them and toss them around and all that. And it was super strange because the movie suddenly switches to a green screen, and it is very obvious they're on a green screen. It all of a sudden, it looks way cheaper. It suddenly looks way cheaper. And I was so befuddled by why that was. I had to pull out my phone to go look it up. Also, it was one of those musical numbers that's just sort of like whatever and doesn't do anything in the plot. It sort of feels like it's just there. And apparently it's because those those puppets were so complex that they needed like 3 people to operate them. And so they wouldn't have been able to hide the wires on set. So they green screened it to make it less obvious, but now it's just a super obvious green screen. Yeah, it's just a little like a little biting off a little more than they could chew. I'm sure like when I look at it like that, very impressive, but it also makes the movie look worse. It's such a weird thing where it's like the technical thing that they went for was so impressive that the other concessions they had to make made the whole scene look worse. And like, just skip it. What? Yeah. This movie's ending is so awesome. I fucking love that. I thought it was going to be all sappy and like sentimental, and that would have been fine. But the fact that she's like, it was like, dude, let's have a fucking party with all the funny animatronics in my room, and we're gonna have a fucking party, and we're gonna play GoldenEye 64 and eat pizza. It was so awesome. It was such a kick-ass ending. I thought it was gonna be like, well, you'll always be in our heart. And she's like, I want you guys here right now. Like, let's fucking go. And they're all just there, and everyone's wearing party hats. And it pulls out, and they're just like, yeah, fuck it. This all rules. It kicked so much ass. I wish every movie ended like that. Oh, it was awesome. We didn't have to be sentimental. We're right here. Yeah, Labyrinth. I guess I should mention, like, the performances. There's, like, some cake on a plate that I'm just, like, eating the crumbs off. Next to me. David Bowie is so... He's perfect. In fact, he's so good for the role that Kat and I were wondering who the hell you would even cast to replace him. he is like a real like once in a like 100 years kind of talent of like that specific kind of guy who has that kind of aura about him, his strangeness, his like funny charisma. He can take lines and he can just take lines that other people wouldn't have been able to do, and he kind of sells them because he's so out there. It is David Bowie playing oh my god, now my throat's all dry. It's David Bowie playing like David Bowie, very literally. Like the King Jared almost feels like one of the personas that he would have made for his musical career. It falls very much in line like that. I'm the Goblin King. I'm the Goblin King Jared. Right? Like it feels like that's one of the, like a Ziggy Stardust or one of those personas that he would take on, the characters he sort of played. Who else? Who's the girl? It's Sarah Connolly? Is that her name? Sarah Connolly? Hang on. Labyrinth girl. Jennifer Connelly. What else was she in? Oh man, her Wikipedia page has a whole section on Labyrinth. Allison, Wizard of Oz. That's the other one that I was thinking of. This, yeah, it felt like a new kind of attempt at something like the Wizard of Oz. So what else did she do? Wait. Oh, the character is just about Sarah Williams. The article is just about Sarah Williams' character, the character she plays in Labyrinth. What the fuck? No, okay. I should have gone to IMDb. All right. You guys are going to have to wait for me. Jennifer Connelly. Oh, she was in A Beautiful Mind. A Beautiful Mind. She's in Hulk. She's Betty Ross. She's in Requiem for a Dream, Snowpiercer, the TV series, Top Gun Maverick. So she's still acting. Is there anyone else that I like? She's in 9. You guys remember 9? That was released on 9/9/09. The Day the Earth Stood Still remake. I didn't even know there was a remake of that. I love the Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah. All right. Well, she's in like a relative. Yeah, she's like had a relatively consistent career. She plays Karen in Spider-Man Homecoming. All right. She's pretty good. She plays the role of like relatable teenage girl pretty well. I suppose. I am not and was not a teenage girl, despite what some of you may believe about me. It's generally good. Generally good. I don't know if there's too much else to say. Good movie. Charming world. I think especially kids would like it. I think kids would think it was neat. Good. I want to talk a bit about the Doom 1+2 remaster, which very weird, clunky title. They decided to call it Doom 1+2, but sort of out of the blue, I guess in honor of it's like an I guess it's the I guess it is the. Oh god, I'm so embarrassed. 2024 minus 1994. It's the 30th anniversary of Doom 2. Let's forget about the math. It's the 30th anniversary of Doom 2, so I guess that they were like, hey, let's do a remaster of the first 2 games, because they're kind of like the same game. I kind of consider them like the same game. So they just call it Doom 1+2. This is releasing on Steam. I believe it's on Epic as well. No one. It doesn't matter. You guys don't use Epic. So this was a nice surprise. It is essentially the Doom releases that were on Steam were a little bit bare bones, which is fine. It's Doom. You're probably going to run it through a source port anyway. But, it's like if you download it and then just click play on Steam, it's just going to open up a DOSBox window, right? It's that kind of like very bare minimum porting job. Barely a port job at all. And that's, it's fine. I literally just use like a source port launcher. I have played a lot of Doom, and I have like maybe 3 minutes logged on Steam because I just play it through a source port launcher. But it is nice to just for people, who don't, because that is like a barrier to accessibility. It a little bit, and it's not a bad thing. It is neat to have be like, oh hey, you got to actually go if you want to play this. You do have to install like a GZ Doom or a Chocolate Doom or whatever your preference is, and it's like, oh god, there's so many choices. What do I go with? And got to learn how to finagle with this software. And even though it's really not hard, it is a barrier for some people. And this does not at all replace those options. And if you're like a weirdo or you're like that kind of a user and you want to actually still go with a source port, that option is totally still there. It's just for the people who don't want to do that. It's all taken care of for them. So that's cool. And you know what? This is a really nice release. So there's a bunch of things included with it. It is called Doom 1+2, and I believe it's now combined like the first 2 games packages. How does it... Because it used to be like, oh, you download it, and you download like the whole Doom bundle, and it would just fill up your library with a bunch of different stuff. There is still a Doom 2 separate release, which is kind of funny. Doom 1+2, and it just includes all of the other expansions and stuff like Master Levels, TNT, Plutonia. So that's nice. And so, it includes the first 2 games, the Doom 2 Master Levels, which you don't have to play. They're not very good. Plutonia Experiment, TNT Evolution, No Rest for the Living, which is... I am not tripping. No Rest for the Living, is that's episode... Oh! No, that was the exclusive... Oh, wow, okay. No Rest for the Living was the expansion for Doom 2 that was made by Nerve Software for the Xbox Live Arcade release. That's cool. All right, I totally forgot. I totally was like, wait, is that what episode 4 was called? No, okay, so that's neat. It also includes... So that's one of those things that's like, okay, that's a cool thing to include. I wouldn't expect anything more, but they actually went another step, and they included Sigil. Sigil is John Romero, his very own episode 5 for Doom, which he made a couple years ago. I haven't actually played Sigil. I should at some point. I totally slipped by me. This re-release happened. I saw it and I was like, cool, let me check that out. And then I didn't. But including Sigil was that's a really cool move. It also has a brand new WAD pack, which is or I don't know what it is. How big is it? They call it an episode. Called Legacy of Rust, which is made in collaboration with id, between a couple different mappers from id, Night Dive, and Machine Games, which is really neat. I should play all this. I got so much stuff. I got so much Doom to play now. So this is now the 3rd time that they've done this. specifically with like Night Dive making a new episode. They did it for Quake 1 and Quake 2 when they remastered those games. And the Quake, I really liked those. I really liked Machine Games' new episodes for those. I have always been in the camp of Quake 1 and 2. Maybe Quake 4 will be different. I hope it's different. I want to play it sometime soon. But Quake 1 and 2 have pretty weak campaigns, in my opinion. Especially in comparison to Doom. There's a couple of reasons for that, and different reasons between the both of them. I have talked at length about those in the past, but yeah, I am not a huge fan of Quake's or Quake 2's campaigns. But I played those episodes, and to be honest, they either solved a lot of the problems I had with them, or were just on. They solved a lot of the issues, and in my opinion, were just, oh my god, like honestly, just visually, they were a real treat. Like Quake mods, there's definitely Quake mods out there, but I have been exposed much less to them because there's a higher, I think there's just a higher barrier to entry because it was, it's a full 3D game. Doom, oh my god, it's so easy. I have played a number of custom Doom mods and mega wads and all that. I've played a number of those, and a lot of them, it's like you just, the editor, it's all 2D. So it's just a lot easier to make. The requirements are a lot lower. So I'm not familiar with Quake 2 or Quake or Quake 2 if there's custom levels or fan mods or anything. I know they're out there, but not nearly as widespread. So that was my first real exposure to, wow, when you are designing for modern hardware and you can take the limits off of these engines, ooh, you can make some gorgeous, really cool stuff. In addition to just very good level design, the fact that I think it's an actual like challenge, Quake 2, I mean. Just a more satisfying level and enemy placement and number and all that for me personally. But yeah, I really enjoyed those. I'm excited. I want to play the new Doom one. So that's really cool. Also just like a ton of other features, like the online local co-op and deathmatch multiplayer. Cross-platform as well. I'm on the website right now. This website is great. So it has built-in mod support through like the Bethesda mod thing or whatever, and they even have there's a Q&A right, and near the bottom, and one of them is how do I make mods for Doom, and they just have a link to Doom tools, and like Ultimate Doom Builder, which is. That doesn't go direct anywhere. Yeah, they just have like links to tools for that stuff, which is really cool. So there's like a mod browser, just like a really nice package. And this kind of got me thinking. Oh, and it also includes IDKFA, which is it's like a cover album by Andrew Holschult, who is like, he does the OST for like every like metal rock OST for like all the boomer shooters. He's, I think, the new like modern Doom composer guy. Holschult, classic, great. Oh my god, he made IDKFA like forever ago, and I think he tweeted one time about how like, dude, I made this album like 15 years ago and I still get people like, it still gets me work because they're like, hey, I heard that, I want to hire you now for this for my project. Yeah, so you get like an optional soundtrack, which is like, all this is really cool. And it got me thinking. There was a little bit of talk on the internet spaces about remasters and remakes, specifically remakes. I saw a little conversation about how people are getting very I don't know, remake happy, where it's like every game needs a remake or something. And it was tipped off by somebody saying that Persona 4 needed a remake badly. And I'm like, a full, like a remake? A remake? Dude, come on. Like, really? Like, you can't. Part of it is, well, number one, there's been a number of really good remakes in the past couple years. Number two is, I think people are, I don't know, I think there's a real aversion to engaging with anything that is like even kind of old or a little bit adverse to your super modern gamer sensibilities. I get it when it's something like System Shock, because that is, there is a barrier there. I will admit that, right? I made like an hour plus long video about how great that game is. I'll admit that there's a barrier there. So I get it, right? I don't know if Final Fantasy VII needed a remake. I don't think Persona 3 needed a remake, to be honest. I really don't. I was thinking about this. I think I would have been happy as a fan of the original game. I played Portable. I think I would have been happy if they just took Fez, Persona 3 Fez, however you pronounce it, gave it a little bit of like a brush up, like a graphical improvement, include some like side goodies and stuff like that, like art, or those games need a music like jukebox mode or something like that. Do something like that, you know? Add little side stuff. Behind the scenes things, and then I would say the main gameplay thing would be like add in the option to have manual party control from Portable. Just add the option, you know, if you want to play with the original where you have to like give commands and set different like styles for the different characters, do that, but like give people the option if they don't want to put up with that bullshit. Just give them the option. I don't know how feasible that is because of hardware and all that stuff. I feel like maybe like at a certain because I wonder like because you know, so the FemC was not included. Okay. The problem with Persona 3 is that, number one, it didn't have a really easily accessible re-release on modern systems. The other thing is that there was never, if you were going to re-release it, there was never a true single one definitive version of the game. Because you have the original release, and then you have Fez, which most people would probably say would be the superior release because of the extra content and all that. But then you also have Portable, which has an entire other playable character, the FemC, the female main character. And that has its own, the FemC version of the story is like, it's its own version of the story, where it's like generally the same, but there's like different character interactions, there's different, you know, you can have relationships with the boys now. Can't be gay before, but now you can be straight, but as a girl. And I know a lot of people hate, like I've had people describe to me some of the things that happen in the FemC route, and it sounds fucking stupid, but it is part of the game, right? And when they were Atlas gave this interview about the remake, and they were like, yeah, we didn't include the FemC because it would require so much work to make all of that new content and have to like reanimate new stuff because there's, you know, all the like anime cutscenes. We'd have to make new versions of all that. And part of me is like, what if you just didn't like spend an entire new game's worth of budget on making a remake and just took all those ideas I just said of just taking like Fez and like brushing it up and re-optimizing it, and then you just took some of the money that you would have spent on a full-on remake and just added that stuff. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a technical expert. I don't know how feasible that would be. I don't know if that's realistic. Maybe they talked about that. Maybe they talked about doing that. I just feel like, damn, you probably spent like 2 or 3 years making that remake and spent a lot of money on it. And you maybe could have gotten something that you maybe could have spent a fraction of that and gotten basically the same thing. I know that the remake had, I don't know them off the top of my head. I haven't played the remake. I know the remake did have some changes in gameplay stuff. If it was feasible to include things like, oh hey, optional party stuff, like manual control versus auto control, and include that as options, I don't see a reason why you maybe couldn't include like different balancing or anything like that, or whatever else they made. What were the changes actually? P3 reload changes. Complete overhaul. Modernization of the original game. User interface, combat, and audio. Okay, graphics. Link episodes. So, like a little more story stuff. More activities. Tartarus is easier to navigate. Combat improvements. So a couple new things and balances and stuff like that. And okay, I mean, like, all that's well and good, but like, did the game need that? I'm just asking from like a practical perspective. All those changes could be totally good. I see the story stuff maybe, but like, how much of that stuff is like, did the game need a massive rebalance, or like, is it just okay to appreciate the game as it was? You know, like, I don't know if I'm being like old thing. I'm not even saying the new thing is good. The new thing is bad. It's probably good. I've heard it's very good. I'd probably like it because I love Persona 3. But I just wonder, like, how many games, instead of remaking them, could we just give it some kind of like, you know, like this Doom 1+2 treatment with like, okay, it's not a full-on remake. Like, why the fuck would you need to remake Doom? just port it to modern systems, give it a little technical brush up, you know, include a bunch of options and settings, make the menu, you know, add whatever shell you want over it with like a bunch of things to, like, essentially what I imagine what they've done is make their own source port. Just make your own source port of Doom, the Doom engine, and include all the options that you want and options for multiplayer and all the content and stuff that was in the previous releases, and just make a big packaged alternate soundtracks. And there's like a little gallery thing where you can look at development stuff that was scrapped, and some of it's really interesting. There's like beta versions of the Doom guy, like head sprite. There's versions where he has an afro for some reason. It's just like a joke, but stuff like that's great. Love looking at stuff like that. I think a lot more games would benefit from a treatment. Like, that's the equivalent to me of like one of those Criterion releases. I would prefer something like that, you know? Remaster, like a good, when an old movie gets like a good 4K remaster that makes it look way better, that you can appreciate on like a really nice screen, and it comes with a bunch of bonus features, commentary tracks, behind the scenes stuff, previously unreleased materials, you know, like a nice release like that. Like, that's what I would prefer for games. And I think that there's a very different sentiment to that versus remake everything, because remaking it almost implies that like the original game is so outdated that it's not worth going back to. But these kind of like these sort of like premium remaster treatment, that treatment is like, I like it more because it's more like, this is a piece of art, and it deserves to be playable, and it deserves to have a release that is easily accessible, that is up to date with like all the stuff around the game to make it just easier to just hop into and experience for a new player. Someone who's never played Doom before is going to have a much easier time hopping into this new remaster and just getting the experience, right? And treating it with like some respect. Like, this is actually something to be revered. This is like an important piece of culture. I prefer that sort of remaster treatment. Hey, we've also been getting a lot of good remasters as of late, you know? I like stuff like that. That personally, that's what I would prefer. Are there things that need remake? What would need a remake? I don't even know. Like, at what point... Here's an interesting question. At what point do you think a remake becomes necessary? Because, okay, obviously there's remakes that are made for money. This happens in movies all the time. We are remaking this movie because the brand name, right? But in games, it's like, I don't know, it's a little different. I feel remakes for games are like... I don't know. Sometimes it might... I feel like I have no clue, you know? I think that games that need that are most deserving of a remake it would probably be some kind of like AAA Naughty Dog action drama game that already has like 2 different releases on the prior 2 consoles and a remaster. I think you should probably remake that and its sequel, which is still available to buy on every single platform and will be forever. Like, obviously that kind of a game, like Last of Us is like some old junky fucked up piece of shit that, like, honestly, it was worse than System Shock. Honestly, like, I don't know how the fuck anyone played that in 2013. 2014? 2013. But like, oh, hang on, The Last of Us Part 1, that was yeah, because there was Last of Us Remastered. Last of Us Part 1, oh my god, finally it's playable. They changed the door textures. Thank fucking god. I was not going to play a game with those shitty ass door textures. I mean, what is this? Like, what is this? The year 1000? Christ. But really, like, at what point do you think a game needs to be remade? I obviously, from my perspective, it's like, I'm trying to think of like the most unapproachable thing by a modern gamer. The first thing my mind went to is like Ultima 1. I tried to play Ultima 1. I understand it, okay? I'm not going to call it a bad game. I won't. I don't think it's a bad game. However, it's like, okay, well, this was definitely from 1980. Or was it 79? Christ. That game is very simple. You can grasp the entirety of Ultima 1 in like 10 minutes. You can basically experience everything the game has to offer, unless you care about the fact that the thing that you're fighting has like a different name that's like a boss name or something like that. Unless you just really need to see what the bosses look like, you can basically experience it in 10 minutes. And I still think that if that game was to get a modern re-release, which they'll never do because EA doesn't give a fuck about any of its old properties, I think I would prefer that it just got a remaster instead of a remake. I don't think it's like, what would even be the point of remaking Ultima 1? To tell like the most bare bones non-existent fantasy story of you have to go into these 4 different dungeons and kill the boss at the end to save the day. Why? Just remaster it. I would there should be like there was like an Ultima collection. That is was that a ski resort? What is that? Is it in Rome? Ultra luxury private okay. No, the Ultima collection released. Oh, this was This was released in 1996. Okay. Yeah. No, I would literally say just like make a collection of the Ultima series. Sorry, 1998. You could easily make a complete collection of every single Ultima game and fit it into like a modern. It wouldn't even take that long to download. Maybe Ultima 9. It's like a slightly bigger game, but like, are you kidding me? Like it on a modern internet speed, even on like a bad internet speed, it would probably take you like under 10 seconds to download Ultima 2. Like I would prefer that, and just I would love that. That's a series that should get a Criterion style treatment. A collection, have a museum, show why these games are important. To like the art form, to technology, to like storytelling and all that. Did you know that Ultima 3 randomly figured this out? I should have included this in my LGBT video. Ultima 3 is like might be the first game with a non-binary character in it, or that lets you play as a non-binary character. That game was made in like 1992 or something, and 1982. And you can play, your character can be male, female, or other. And it's just there. And, it doesn't really have any effect. I don't think that has any effect on gameplay or visuals at all, because it's like the same tiny little sprite no matter what. But like, they let you do it. I think it's so funny that like, when that Starfield thing happened and that guy was like, the fucking pronouns. And it's like, dog, this has been Ultima 3, dude. Had like part of the foundation of the entire Western role-playing game genre. Like, they were doing it back then. It's not that fucking crazy. But all those guys just, it's all. I don't even want to get into that shit. Anyway, that's like the type of treatment that should get. Fucking Ultima 4 is such a cool, like the whole Age of Enlightenment trilogy is so cool, 4 through 6, and like, it's such an interesting. It's so interesting. I could talk about those games for a while, but like those should get like a nice remaster, a nice collection. Just dedicated to this whole series. Include the freaking like Stygian Abyss and like the first person games and all that. And I don't think it would be hard. I really don't think it would be that hard. Anyway. Yeah, that's the Doom 1+2 remaster. Did I have anything else to say about it? It's really cool. I appreciate them doing this. I like stuff like this a lot. I think it's really neat that Bethesda and id have actually been, in the last couple years, very proactive about not only maintaining their old properties like Doom and Quake, but actually giving them a lot of love with these remasters, right? Like, I think everyone can be happy. So that's very cool. I want to talk a bit about Marvel Snap, which is a game that I have been playing on my telephone, on your fucking telephone. That's David Lynch, by the way. That's my impression of David Lynch. Your fucking telephone? Marvel Snap was a game that interested me the first time I heard about it. I remember it getting announced. I didn't end up checking it out for one reason or another. But due to just hearing about other people talk about it and getting recommended it, I thought, you know what? I'll check it out. And I won't lie, I love Marvel Comics. I do. I love Marvel Comics so much. I have a strong affinity for them and their universe. Fuck it. You'll get me with a big crossover thing. So Marvel Snap, if you aren't aware, is an online, I guess, collectible card game. Yeah, not trading card game. There's no trading. But it's a collectible card game. It's a digital card game. I was going to say in the style of like Hearthstone or something like that, but that's really not accurate. It's not a card battler. It has a very different approach to the digital card game thing, which I find really refreshing and cool. So here's the way that Marvel Snap works. So you build a deck, and so what's cool is that in many ways, Snap is a lot simpler than other card games, but it means that it gets to the interesting ideas that it wants. Like, it really cuts the fat out. It cuts out the fat, which, hey, maybe you like the fat, but this game is cutting it out to kind of jump straight to the point. So first of all, decks in this game are like 20 cards, something like that. Not very large by card game standards, and there are no duplicates. There is one card of a type. All the cards are Marvel characters. So the layout of the game board is there is no card battling. There are 3 different locations, as they're called, in the center of the board. At the start of turn 1, the first location is revealed, and then 2 and 3 on turns 2 and 3. And each location has, you put down cards at a location. Cards have an energy cost, and much like in a Hearthstone way, your energy, your maximum energy raises by 1 each turn and fills up at the start of each turn. Cards have an energy cost and a power level. They have a power value. And basically, there can be a maximum of 4 cards normally at a location, and whoever gets more power on their side of that location wins that location. You don't have to win all 3 locations, you just have to win more than the opponent by the time the game is over. And the game always ends in 6 turns. It is a 6-turn long game, so pretty snappy. Haha, snappy. I didn't mean to. I leaned into the pun. The game always, it's 6 turns long, so it's very compact. It's a very compact game with a lot of decision making, because it's this pretty simple idea. It's just get more numbers on your side of let's say 2 locations, right? Most games are going to come down to winning 2 out of 3 locations. But, naturally, there are a bunch of complicating factors and mechanics. So, first of all of the locations have different properties, except for, like, 1. There is, like, 1 exception that is just, like, it doesn't have anything special about it. But it'll be things like, every card here, or, like, if there's only 1 card at this location, plus 5 power, or something like that. There'll be ones that are like, draw from your opponent's deck, and for the rest of the game, while that location exists, you have to draw, you will draw from your opponent's deck, and you're just like, oh fuck, this is weird, this is different, I did not, alright, I have to play with cards that I did not, I don't know how this works. There will be locations that are let's say things like, hey, on turn 5, you must play the card. You must play your card here. You can only play cards here on turn 5. And things like that. Just all sorts of different mechanics and little things to throw a wrench into your plans. And that's where a lot of the excitement kind of tends to come from. This was made by, so the lead designer of Marvel Snap is Ben Brode. And that immediately was something that caught my interest when I first heard about this game. Ben Brode was the lead designer for the first couple years of Hearthstone, back when I was playing it, back in like middle school in like the mid 2010s. I played Hearthstone for like 3 years, and this game has some interesting distinctions from Hearthstone. I asked about like how do they balance the game, and apparently they actually do patch notes. I've seen like at least 2 patches come through that actually change the stats of cards, which I think is really funny because Ben Brode was very adamant against not changing existing cards in Hearthstone. They would just introduce new versions of those cards that were like better or worse. I don't know. It was kind of dumb. I guess he's moved on from that and he's okay with actually fiddling with the stats of cards now. So Hearthstone was designed in many ways to take advantages of the unique qualities of being digital. So, for instance, one of the subtle ways that you might not realize, I didn't realize this till it was pointed out to me, but in Hearthstone, cards carry over damage. Like, if two cards battle and one of them suffers damage, it keeps it. It doesn't get reset, unlike in Magic the Gathering, where the damage that something has taken resets every turn. Now, in Magic, that's because it's a pen and paper game. Well, not pen and paper. It's a physical card game. And if you were to keep track of the health values of every single thing, like for the whole game, it would just be a nightmare. It would be really annoying. So they just made a rule of, okay, every turn, health resets, toughness resets. But Hearthstone, they can just have the computer handle it, and they can have the number change live in-game. So you can actually do things like that. Which would normally be very cumbersome in a physical game. Hearthstone also has a lot of randomness. Man, Hearthstone is almost, I want to say almost infamous for its RNG. It was something that the designers clearly loved and leaned into very hard, to the chagrin of many players, and especially high-level players, who often felt like, a common complaint of Hearthstone was that, man, it really feels like this game at a certain point just comes down to like literally zero skill, because there are cards that can just win or lose you the game based entirely off of random chance. And it is, and it's like, obviously there's a risk reward associated with it, but then you would get situations where there were cards that maybe on paper seemed like they had a decent risk reward balance, like Dr. Boom, or the original Dr. Boom. If you look up that card now, it's gotten nerfed. Or what was it? Jabberwocky? Whatever it was. And where it's like, on paper, this might look like, oh, well, it's like an equal chance that it could screw you over. Or maybe it won't do what you want. But then in practice, oh, wait, the actual way this works out in a real game is like always good for me. It is almost always skewed in favor of the person who played it. And it really fucks the game up. Dr. Boom was like a guarantee in like, even like, it was like a 7-cost card, and you ran that in like aggro decks. It would be like the one card over like 3 mana that you'd play. It was like 7, because it was just that strong. You'd have things like that. Marvel Snap, from what I can tell, from what I've experienced so far, has relatively little RNG in the actual cards themselves. It is mostly confined to the locations. Most cards are, I would say, fairly deterministic, as in, it'll be something like, oh, there's a card, put it down, and every time you play another card at that location, it gains +1 power, Very simple effect. Most cards are something like that. It'll just be like, when this happens, do this. And there is no, like, it doesn't select targets at random. There's a couple. There'll be like, put down, you play, it's like there's a, what is it, White Tiger. She's like a 5-cost or something like that. So pretty pricey. You're going to be playing her later into the game, most likely. But she's only got 1 power, right? So what's the catch? It's that when she is revealed on the field, essentially her on-play effect, is that she summons an 8-power little tiger card at a different location. So it's one of the other 2 locations. You can kind of manipulate it if one of the other locations is filled up and there's only one viable place for it to be spawned. But for the most part, it's like that's like part of it. It's relatively tame, I would say. Relatively tame RNG kind of risk reward balancing. And a 50-50 chance is not that. It's not that crazy. So there's a little bit of RNG, but for the most part, it's very restrained, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that because it takes a lot of the, randomness out of deck building, I suppose. Like when there's a part where there's like a certain level in Hearthstone of unreliability that is built into your deck, on top of just, I don't know if there's like, you guys can't hear that, but there's either like cars or some weird animal making noises somewhere in my neighborhood. All right, it's like a weird wailing noise, like, I don't know if that's just cars going fast or something. It's weird. Anyway, what was I talking about? Right. You can be sure that when you put your cards in your deck, with the exception of, again, a couple cards that run on RNG, you basically know what that card is going to do when you play it, which is nice. And when you run into randomness, it mostly comes in the form of all of these locations, which are things that both players have to deal with. And you always know what it's going to be. You always have the information. That's the other thing. So it's like turn 2, right? The location in the center is revealed. It reveals what the effect is. And then you get to use that to make your decisions for the card. You can play like on a location that hasn't been revealed yet. That's fine. But the game lets you do that. But just, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you have to work with RNG, you can roll the dice a little bit by playing on a location that hasn't been revealed yet. But when they've been revealed, you basically know what to expect. And so both players are kind of working in the same chaos field, you know? When that shows up, it'll be there's one location that's like, after turn 3, ruin a different location, and it'll just like bomb. It'll just send out missiles and bomb another one and turn it into like essentially a textless, like a vanilla location called like ruins or whatever. So you just have to be like, okay, there's a location here that really favors me and my deck or the cards I have in my hand. If I play them there, I could take advantage of it in the first 3 turns. But if it gets ruined, I might be at a disadvantage. And that's like a thing you have to play around as well. And your opponent can play around that too. They can make their own bets as to like, okay, which location is going to get ruined. And that stuff is fun. It makes the RNG things common between both of you. This game also just has a lot of really nice little things that, you know, I really appreciate them. Little features and touches and the way that things are set up. For instance, I mentioned that decks are relatively small and there's no duplicates. So how do they... Okay, so first of all, a feature that I was floored by, and I can't believe I haven't seen it in more digital card games, you can go to your collection of cards and tap on a card and pull it up and look at it and everything. And there is a button that says, make me a deck. And the game will, you tap it, and the game will crunch some numbers, look through all the cards you have, look for potential synergies, and build you a little deck based around it. And I'm sure that those auto decks aren't like super competitive. But man, if you are not the deck building type, and like I'm not really the deck building type, right? It's such a nice feature because that's one of the things that I felt I've always been comfortable just like looking up, okay, what's like a good deck, and I'll just play that, right? Deck building to me has never been a huge part of the genre. It's more just like playing the actual cards. It's really nice to have that feature just to kind of get your foot in the door, because honestly, I think a lot of people have probably had this experience. You're not adverse to thinking strategically or anything like that. It's more so you look at your collection, you think like, okay, like I don't know really how to identify like a win condition for a deck. Like I can't see a combo. I can't see what the synergies are. I'm just going to put random cards in my deck that I like playing, and hey, maybe I'll have fun with that, but you're not really tapping on the strategic element of deck building. You're sort of just doing it randomly, or you're just net decking, right? And at that point, it's almost like, why is there even a deck building feature if you're not going to engage with it? This at least lets you do some of that and you can kind of look at like, okay, there's a card called is it Kazan, whatever he is. Basically, he's like a 4-cost card, and when he's revealed on the field. So the way that the game works is during the turn, you both take your turn at the same time, and you put down your cards, and then once you like lock in. You're like, all right, that's my decision. You hit the button to lock in, and then once you're both locked in, it shows you where the cards were, and then it reveals them in the order that they were played. They're like face down, and they flip up. And if they have like an on-reveal ability or something like that, that's when that'll trigger. So Kazar, whatever, has an effect where when he's revealed, he gives like +2 or +3 or something to all of your 1-cost cards. I think it's non-reveal, not an ongoing. But so he basically buffs up all of your 1-cost cards. So I think when you get him, the game literally says, there's a little pop-up that says, you could build a deck based on this card. You know, you could make a religion out of this. And it points to the button that says, make me a deck. And you click it, and it makes you a deck with Kazoodle and a bunch of 1-cost cards that you own. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. So there's a very obvious synergy. It's clearly like leading you into it's guiding your hand a little to take you from like, I have no idea what I'm doing or how to even start approaching the deck building part of this, into, okay, I'm kind of understanding the strategy a little bit, right? I'm getting it a little bit of like, okay, so this is like a card that I can buff up a bunch of other cards, and that's like a valid way, that's like a good strategy, a viable strategy to win. So I really like that feature, and I did that, and it put together a decent deck for me. So that's what I put together best around like Odin. I took like Odin, who Odin has like it's like a 6-cost card, and on reveal he like makes all of your other on reveal effects at that location repeat. So it put a bunch of strong on reveal effects into a deck together, and I played with it a little bit, and I thought to myself something like, oh man, I really want a 1-cost card in here. Like, I want a little bit more early game. Once I was able to play with it a little, and I swapped out one thing for another thing, and I liked how that played a little better. I felt like I could kind of establish tempo a little faster when I drew that, and like already that took me from like a complete novice level to most of the deck is figured out for me, and I understand I could basically figure out why each card is in there. And now I'm playing with it, and I'm thinking like, I really want this. And now I can kind of go on a much smaller level, right? Because like part of the intimidation factor for deck building is like, fuck, you make a Yu-Gi-Oh deck and you need like 40 cards minimum. You're like, what the fuck do I put in here? Like, do I have to think about all of these? Like, oh, it's honestly asking you a lot to try to build a deck from scratch with any kind of real thought or strategy behind it. But when the deck is pre-made for you, and then you can start going in and thinking like, I want to customize this little bit. You can actually start tapping into the real strategy of what deck building's all about, of what you want, what you kind of feel like you need to shore up some of your weaknesses. And it's a really nice onboarding feature. I really appreciate it. I also like the way that this game handles progression. So there are no card packs. There are no card packs in Marvel Snap. Essentially, the way that it works is it starts you off with a bunch of cards, right? And then by playing games, you earn rewards. The game has like a couple different. It's got like a regular basic currency and the premium currency, but it has these things called boosters. So instead of buying booster packs, it has these little booster orbs, and the boosters are different for every character. They're different for every Marvel character. So there's like Spider-Man boosters and Colossus boosters. And once you have enough boosters, you can go to a Spider-Man card. Once you have enough Spider-Man boosters, you can go to your Spider-Man card that you own, and you can upgrade it. And upgrading it does nothing to the stats. It does nothing gameplay-wise. It's actually just visual. So it starts out like the level 1 is like a frame break. And that's so you go from just like the enclosed card art to now it extends beyond the borders of the frame a little bit. Like, ooh, okay. And then you move up to, oh, now it's 3D. And there's like a little 3D effect, and there's different layers to it. And now there's an animated background. And now there's a shiny logo, and then all this. And it steps up to like, I think 6 levels or something like that. And every time which require increasingly more, resources to upgrade. And every time you upgrade, every level of upgrade adds to a collection level. So at like level 1, you do like the first upgrade, and it'll give you like, was it 1 or 2 adds to your collection level or something like that. Something like that. And then the next one will give you 3, and then 4, and so on. The higher, the higher level that you level your card up to, the more points you get in your collection level. And then as you go up the collection level, you get different rewards. So some of it is like currency, some of it is this or that, but most of the time it's cards. And so the way that they do it, at least for the first 2, so as I understand, they essentially, I think they switch up how it works the further up you get. But essentially they designed 2 pools of cards, pool 1 and pool 2. So you start out, and as you're going up the collection level and gaining more rewards, every card you get is going to be from pool 1. So by the time you get up to like level 200 something, which isn't very difficult, you're going to have every card in pool 1. It's random which one you get, but you will get all of them by the end. You will not get any repeats. There's no dupes in that sense. And then you have all the pool 1 cards, right? And they do that for pool 2 as well, which I'm now working my way up through. And then I think after that, they go into like booster. I don't know how it works beyond that, but that's how it works for the first, let's say, big leg of your progress in this game. Beyond that, the way that they figured out to, I guess, monetize themselves is not with like card packs, which is kind of a little, in retrospect, I look at it and it is kind of frustrating, right? To be like, well, the gameplay, like I was always so, oh my God, I think they made it better in Hearthstone, but it used to be like very, fuck, I have to spend money to get the cards, like the crucial cards that are meta that you need to actually compete at anything other than like a basic bitch level. Do I need to like spend money on card packs? Like, god damn. It is frustrating to lock you off from gameplay things. Marvel Snap essentially does the equivalent of skins, where they have not different cards, but different versions of cards, like different artwork. So there'll be like, okay, here's your Spider-Man. Now here's the Spider-Man pixel variant. Here's the Spider-Man variant in this artist's art style. Well, they commission them, right? They do series. They do a bunch of different series of cards. Series? They do a bunch of different series of alternate card art. Sometimes based off like getting different artists to do stuff, different style, different, all this or that. Sometimes different themes. There's like, Venomized versions of cards. And it's all like, here's Marvel characters, but with Venom symbiotes and all that. And those count. So those count for different cards. That's the other nice thing, is that they also kind of give a little more mileage to boosters that you get, because those count as different cards to be upgraded. So those all have their own like upgrade levels, and they don't just scale with the original card. So you can get some more collection levels out of them. That's basically how it does it. And I like that. I can appreciate that. It's all cosmetic. I don't, and there are certain things that I looked at and I thought, damn, that is a really cool looking variant of that card. Huh, okay, cool. But nothing that made me feel bad in the way that I feel like gating booster packs behind microtransactions did. So I like that. They run like new events relatively frequently. So the reason it's called Marvel Snap is because there's this mechanic in the game where once you get to like where you're actually playing real players, they have like a season pass thing, or it's not really a season. I don't know if I guess it's a season. I don't know. It's just like another progression track, and you earn points along it. Except there's a gambling element, so you don't pay for it. By the way. This is just like a free, right? The regular progression track of the ranked system. So when you're in game, let's say if you win a game normally, you will get 1 point towards the pass, like the next level of the pass. However, at any point during the game, but I think only once per turn per player, you can choose to snap. There's a little cube at the top of the screen with a number that represents how many points that game is going to be worth for each player. So it'll start out at 1, and then you can hit snap. I think it maybe ups to 2 by the end, naturally, but you hit snap, and it will double the wager. And so if it's at 2, if it's reached 2, which I think it might do that by like the midway point of the game, you can hit snap, and then the next turn it'll be worth 4, and the opponent can do that, and if you get it worth like 8 or something like that. And now it's much more high stakes because it can take you down like an entire battle pass level. So if you are really confident that you're gonna win, you can hit snap and be like, yeah, bitch, I'm gonna win this card game. And then maybe you lose and you're like, I'm stupid. I definitely did that once or twice. Because, it's a card game. Sometimes random shit happens that you are not expecting. And you get blindsided by it. Yeah, I have really been enjoying my time with Marvel Snap. It's a very chill game. I appreciate it. It's relatively. I say it's chill. I say it's chill because it's like I don't feel a ton of pressure from the game to do stuff. I don't know. Sometimes there's a lot of mobile games, a lot of live service games that feel like they're just funnels to get you to spend money. Marvel Snap, being a free-to-play game, obviously gives you the option to pay for more stuff if you want. That's the business model. Okay, whatever. But I don't feel like I'm being funneled into it, which I appreciate. I like that. It is, although I can't watch anything in the background while I play, because it's a focused, condensed game for those like 5-10 minutes that I get. I don't know what the longest game I've played would be. I don't know what the average time of a game is. Maybe let's say 7 minutes on average. I have to be kind of locked in. Like I have to make a lot of decisions within a relatively small amount of time, within 6 turns. There aren't a lot of moments where I feel like my decision is 100% obvious and I'm just going through the motions of like, well, now I do this, now I do this, now I do this, which I think some card games can fall into because they, the deck plays a certain way. So the deck that I'm playing right now, I net decked it. I don't care. I did do a little bit of changing because I didn't like 1 or 2 of the cards that it had in it. But it is a pretty fun ongoing deck, as it's called. Ongoing effects are effects that are just active as long as the card is in play. So the deck is based around, it has a couple different sort of like win conditions. It has cards that like buff up other ongoing cards and things like that, so you can win through like that sort of buffing sheer numbers effect. There's some fun synergy between, there's a Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Those are separate cards and they have synergy together. Moon Girl is a 4-drop who she duplicates your hand. So every card in your hand gets doubled when you play her. It's an on-reveal effect. And then Devil Dinosaur is a card that gets +2. It's like a 5-drop, so you can play it the very next turn. And it's like, what is it? I forget what the base power is, like 9. And it gets +2 for every card in your hand. So the strategy is you get a turn 4, turn 5 combo of, if you have both of them in your hand, play Moon Girl, get a bunch of cards, double up your Devil Dinosaur, and then the next 2 turns, just drop your Devil Dinosaurs onto locations and with like +15, you know, or they have like 15 power, and it's just like big brute force, fun combo. There's some other combos about like, okay, you put this card on like maybe the rightmost location, and then there's this card Claw, and he buffs up the location to the right. He gives you like +8 power at the location to the right. And so you like do that. It's a pretty fun deck, and I've just been having a good time with it. I gotta give them some applause. They designed a pretty fun card game with some cool characters and ideas and mechanics. It's kind of funny because you look at just iterations of digital card game design, and I look at something like Hearthstone to Legends of Runeterra, and Legends of Runeterra wanted to make a big change from Hearthstone, which is they identified that in Hearthstone there is a sort of, I take my turn, you take your turn, and there isn't a lot of interaction between the players. Now, part of that was because Hearthstone was essentially trying to be a more approachable version of Magic the Gathering. And so they limited how much interaction, like how much stuff can I do on my opponent's turn, and vice versa, and vice versa. How much, they really wanted to limit that. There's like the secrets, there's like secret cards, but there's only like 3 classes in the game that even have them. They essentially function like trap cards from Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you're familiar. And Legends of Runeterra tried to increase the amount of direct, like little interactions, mental interactions between players and the mind games by including like essentially like the little primed dock that you put your cards on before they technically go into play. And so you can like basically flash that you have a card without actually playing it, which is like, okay, that's a built-in part of the game that affects the mental back and forth between players. What I think is funny is that Snap almost goes in the opposite direction, where instead of increasing the amount of interactions between players, there is almost no direct interactions between players. It's more so, it ends up feeling a lot more like one of those like economy board games, like tabletop games, where you're fighting more over resources. You are indirectly battling the other player by trying to outsmart them and out-strategize them. So like there's cards that do bank on your opponent doing certain things. Like all of the Guardians of the Galaxy cards, all those characters, they have effects where if your opponent, they have like okay stat lines, even like pretty decent stat lines for their cost. But if your opponent played a card, essentially, if your opponent played a card at the same location, the turn that you played your like Guardians of the Galaxy, like your Star-Lord, it'll get, your card will get like a plus, like a bonus to its power, like +5 or something like that. So you can take Star-Lord from like a 2 power card for 2 energy or however much he costs, to like a 6 power card. And it's like, oh shit, doing that on turn 2. All right. And that's like based on making a bet. So you can make informed decisions like, okay, I've seen this guy play 2 cards. I think he might be going for this sort of a deck. And then turn 3, this location gets revealed and you think that motherfucker wants to play the card there. And he's going to want to capitalize on that. And you play, Groot, who's like a 3-drop, and he gets +5 or something if they played a card at that location. And you play it, and then you lock in your turn, and then you see their card slide in onto the same location. You're like, fuck yeah. Oh, I totally got you, dude. I totally called that you would do that. And it's the little indirect games that are pretty fun about it. Indirect interaction is I'm sure there are plenty of people who have studied way more about card games that have a lot more to say about it. But it's like just a neat aspect of the game. So yeah, Marvel Snap, I would recommend it. I'd give it a thumbs up. I'd give it a recommend, if any of that sounds interesting to you. Now, finally, I want to talk about an alpha test that very exclusive alpha test. You have to go click a button on Steam to get into it. For Mecha Break. So Mecha Break is sort of it is a PvP mech team-based 3D action fucking smorgasbord clusterfuck game that looked really cool. I remember seeing like the first reveal trailer for it at a Summer Games Fest or something like that, or something I was streaming, like maybe the Game Awards. And I thought it looked cool. I hadn't thought about it in a while, and I found out that it was getting heavy. There was a previous alpha, and I just heard about the new one that happened recently. And I played a bit of it, and you know what? That is a cool-ass game. I'm not gonna lie, that is a cool-ass game. So Mecha Break is a team-based mech shooter, I suppose. If you're familiar with the Gundam EX Maxi Boost on whatever the hell those games are called with their crazy titles. Gundam Extreme Versus, I think, is the series. Kind of like that. 3D action games, team-based, all that jazz. Different objectives for different game types and maps and that sort of thing. Man, this game's really cool. Mecha Break is really intent on selling you the cool extreme part about mechs. Like, I've put a lot of time into Titanfall. Titanfall in many ways feels like a very heavy game, right? Like, the mechs are supposed to be these big, heavy, grounded things that could exist in reality. Mecha Break is like really fucking anime. And you get that immediately during the tutorial when you jump, and you jump like at the speed of light, and you go up. They are like, no, these things are fast and powerful and tanky. They are big ass machines, and they are strong as hell. They are powered up. So the game is, I would say, character based. Yeah, it's like a character based shooter with lots of a couple characters who are mainly melee focused, some who can switch between, some who are, all sorts of different balancing of this or that. It's kind of hard to talk about because I feel like in many ways that's just a very apt description for most of the game. I guess I could just talk about what's cool about it. So the mechs are really cool. They were designed by let me look up his name. I forget his name. Mecha Break Mech Designers. Junya Ishigaki and Takayuki Yanase, who are They have Yanase has worked on like Gundam. He's worked on Eureka 7, Armored Core 6. Ishigaki worked on Xenogears and a bunch of Gundam stuff. So like pretty experienced mech designers. The mechs look cool. They do look cool. They're good mech designs. So first of all, cool robot. That's like the first thing you got to strike off. Next, holy shit. This it took a little bit of adjustment to get like how hyper this game feels. The number one word I would use to describe this game is busy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, man, there's a couple different movement options that are universal. So you can do, if you hit like shift, you can do I guess like a dodge. It's like a directional boost that you can do. And it is like you snap into that direction. You go, boom! And there's a big crack of energy. It's very powerful and fast. The jumps are just like that, but vertically, right? And then you can sprint. They're not really sprinting. They're just sort of like moving faster than they would have otherwise. Mech sprinting. They're just boosting. So like movement is very fast and very frenetic, and like dodging in and out of the way. You have like a limited amount of energy that refills when you're not doing stuff like that. I believe different mechs have different amounts of energy. So some of them can burn through it really fast, and some of them can just go for like ever before they have to take a breather. Fast, you end up with these super anime like dashing, zipping, zooping around, and it is a bit to kind of wrap your head around at first, or to like adjust your brain to the speed of how fast the characters are moving around. But once you get into it, it's got a nice feel. The mechs feel very good to pilot. They have a nice mix of, they have that weightiness like I mentioned, but if you want to, you can move fast, which the universal movement options offer. The variety of mechs I thought was pretty satisfying. I didn't try out all of them. The nice thing about the alpha is that, so you do have to unlock mechs progressively as you go with like currency, but in the alpha they just give you a fuck ton of currency and you can just buy all of them to check stuff out. So I checked out a good number of them. I really liked Panther, which is a more melee, it's an all melee mech. What are they called? Breakers or strikers or something? I think break. They're called breakers. Panther's deal is that it's like a speedy kind of assassin, I guess. Its primary ability is it has this like lance that you can spin up super fast. You can hold the button down to start spinning the lance up. And then once you let go, Panther will dash forwards with like the lance extended, like it's jousting. And if you meet an enemy, you'll like pin them and pull them along, and just continuously deal damage to them as you go until you stop or you hit a wall, and then just like grind into them. Really cool. And then the alternate weapon that you have, you can switch it between a shield, which gives you kind of like a parry. Blocking in this game kind of sends you flying back and at a bit of a disadvantage. Or getting blocked in this game. There's a couple characters with shields, and they kind of have like a big bong, and then they'll bounce back, and sometimes you're punishable. I'm not sure what the rules are exactly. And then you can switch that to a sword, which is a more traditional / melee. So basically going around and then just jumping in and drilling people and just pinning them across the sky is really fun. Lots of aerial combat in this game. Oh yeah, because all the mechs can fly, naturally. They can all fly. and all that. Some of them are built specifically for flying. Oh, I loved what was it, Falcon? Or there's like 2 of them that have optional, they have transforming modes, which is great. That's a great thing to include in a game like this. There's a couple transforming mechs, and 2 of them turn into like planes and just zip. They just zoom. Like the feeling of speed is great. The maps are generally just big enough that you feel like you can move around and they can actually accommodate all the players, because it's like a 5v5 game. I think 5v5 or 6v6, I forget. They can accommodate the number of players and how fast they're allowing you to go, while also being enclosed enough that the action is pretty consistent. I rarely felt like, there were a couple moments where it just so happened that like everyone in the game was on the other side of the map from me, and I had to like do some boosting over. But you know, that's kind of on me. That sort of thing's just gonna happen in a multiplayer game. Pretty satisfied with the map design at the moment. When I talk about busyness, man, there's a lot of fucking voice lines that go on all the time. You have a little operator. You have an operator who's always like giving you information about the battle and the state of the, you know, an announcer essentially. And when you die, when you respawn. So essentially, when your mech gets totaled, there's an animation of your little custom created character, which that created character is pretty good. That's a pretty good like modern, you know, in a post Street Fighter 6 world. That's a pretty good character creator. What was I saying? There's a little animation of them. You get to see them fairly often because every time you respawn, every time you die, there's an animation of them ejecting, like a shot of them in the seat and like hitting all the buttons until they eject. And then after your countdown timer, there's a whole reinitializing and dropping down back into the fight. And dude, there's like 3 or 4 voice lines that play every time you do it. It's like, back online, launching now. And then this update about the game, Stratum Shatterer deployed. And like constant noise and things like that. Like, maybe it would be nice to turn it down a little bit. Maybe the frequency down a little bit. But yeah, it definitely matches. It matches the aesthetic. It is excessive in many ways. Part of the point is excess, so I get it. And it didn't like bother me too much. But it was a fact. Like, you will notice it. It wasn't a negative. Just you'll notice it. The first mech you get is like this. I actually ended up liking it. I usually don't gravitate towards the balanced all-rounder type of mech, but I actually thought it was a cool design. It's also very easy to play. I forget what it's called, Alizny or something like that. Essentially, the gimmick is, and this kind of set me up for some expectations for the other mechs that were not met, because it's just designed in a different way, or like it has this gimmick where I'll explain. It has this gimmick where when you start, it has like this armor, right? And it has a couple different, it has like a gun and a sword, and it has like a couple different abilities, right? And then if your health gets totaled, you lose the armor, but you essentially get like a respawn. You basically get like a second wind, but as a smaller, lighter mech that is, I think, faster, but you're limited to like just, you only have like 2 weapons as opposed to I think like 3 or 4 different optional things that you had with the armor, because you had like a little activatable missile thing as well, or like a cannon, something like that. You only have like gun and sword, and you get the option, and you also, I think, don't have as much energy or health, so you're like a squishier, lighter, weaker version, but you're still in the fight. And you get the option once per life to, when you're in that form, to call the armor back down for like essentially get like a supply drop, and that you're like invulnerable during it. So you can do some very cheeky fight until you get destroyed. You're invulnerable for a little bit, and then fight a little more, and then once your health starts dropping, call down the armor and like strategically time it and like, well, okay, well that's it until you essentially get 2 more goes because you're gonna have that and then the armorless form again, and then after that nothing until you're forced to respawn. That stuff was fun. A lot of abilities, this kind of threw me off. So there's an auto targeting system, which is good, probably good for a game like this. A lot of the abilities are, especially the guns, are on. You have to like charge them up and then you release them. They activate on release. It's all on like negative edge. And that threw me off in the beginning because I'm kind of used to just, click and it fires. But like almost nothing was happening. I couldn't really tell if I was doing damage. I couldn't really tell if there was an animation. And no, yeah, there are a lot of weapons that have to be charged up in order to get a little more shots out of them or something like that. Some of them are just automatic, like Gatling gun sort of weapons. But a lot have to be like charged up, which is cool. I got used to it. It wasn't a problem. Just threw me off for a bit. A lot of the mechs, all of the mechs have their own sort of unique little setups. There's a guy he's like a melee fighter with a big axe, and it has a move where you basically make like you make a cube around you that like traps opponents inside, which is cool. It reminded me, I was just doing combo trials for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite the other night, and that's like exactly how the Space Stone works in that game. When you with like the full like super move that the Space Stone gives you, so that's funny. There's one that has like a turret form where you just like hunker down and you take almost no damage from the sides, but you are like a spitting death machine. There's the plain ones that I mentioned. There's 2 different snipers that have a little bit of different flavors of snipers. One of them is a little lighter and can like move around, is more mobile, and can actually like I think shoot in the air. I think that's the one. And the other one can't shoot in the air, but it's like either more damage or something like that, or less mobile or something along those lines. You're a lot of like trade-offs between mobility. Mobility seems like a big deal in the game. Mobility, damage, time to charge something up. Specific little individual abilities and stuff like that. And I really like what they're doing. It's definitely got like, it needs some polish, but the basic core game is really fun. I had a very good time with it. I ended up dropping like, what does Steam say? Almost 7 hours into it. In like, I only played one session, but it was like a good like 7-hour session. I just sat there and was like, man, I'm not working on a video now. I'm going to play this game. And I had a good time with it. So it was just an alpha. I imagine there's going to be more content, more characters, polishing, characters' kits might get reworked. This thing might get expanded. But the basic core of the game is very solid and very promising. I think this is a hard thing to fuck up. This is a difficult foundation to actually screw up in a final release. So, if this game interests you at all, if you like mechs, if you like the team stuff was not too crazy. I felt like that was the other thing, is it's not too crazy reliant on team play, which I think is important for a team game. It's important for it not to be reliant. That's what I mean, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. I felt like I could generally kind of do my own thing, but obviously if you're in a 2-on-1, it's a big help. I don't know. I never felt like I was being forced to work with a team, but generally we were all kind of doing the same thing, which helped a lot. Sometimes there were occasions where I was like, okay, my team is just not focusing on doing the actual objective. So that was a little annoying, but I mean, like, hey, what are you going to do? Also, games are pretty short. Match length was pretty short, like maybe 10 minutes. So pretty bite-sized. You can jump in, play a couple games, get some stuff, yada yada. yeah, I would be, if any of that sounds interesting to you, keep your eye on it. Wish list it, so if there's like a new beta or an alpha or whatever. And I'm curious. I'm definitely down to play the next alpha that comes out, or the next test. I'd love to see how they change it, if there's anything more. Yeah, Mecha Break. Be on the lookout for that. And with that, I think I'm going to bring this to a close. Thank you so much for listening. If you've listened this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. And I'll get to it next time. The next video is in progress already. It's in progress. I'm looking forward to talking about it. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. I don't really have anything else to say. Patreon. Oh, I have a new coffee. I have a coffee where you can just give like a quick donation to me if you don't want to like subscribe for multiple months or something like that. You can just give me like $1 on coffee. I think I had a weird thing. I wanted it the minimum to be at $1, but it like reset it to $5. Hopefully it's at $1 now. You can send me $1 if you want. Also, because coffee takes like almost like zero cut from any donations. Less than Patreon. Less than PayPal. Fuck. You know. So if you want to, then send that to me. That's available. I hope it'll be in the. I'll put it in the description. Anyway. Bye.